Good morning, St. Kitts and Nevis, and welcome to another edition of Voices here on 98.9 Win FM. Good morning to all of our beautiful listeners. We have here in our studios this morning Dr. Merisa Grant-Tate. She is an oncologist and she works with the St. Kitts and Nevis Ministry of Health. I think she also works with the St. Kitts Health Promotion Unit and some work there. and they are embarking upon a project in commemoration of Breast Cancer Awareness Month being celebrated throughout the month of October. So Dr. Grant-Tate is here to provide some insight and to educate the listeners about the campaign and other aspects of oncology, breast cancer, and related topics. So, welcome, Dr. Grant-Tate.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. And how are you this morning? How are
Not at
you?
all. Thank you. Not bad.
Awesome. So, as I would have said before, this discussion would be about breast cancer. It would be about the campaign and what the health promotion unit, the ministry, the St. Kitts and Nevis, I think is the Breast Cancer Society.
Uh, well,
The Cancer
at the
Society.
St. Kitts Cancer Society.
Yes,
The
the
St. Kitts Cancer Society.
yes.
Right.
So just for you to give an insight as to what you guys will be doing.
Right.
Go ahead.
So what it is, in fact, is a collaboration between the Ministry of Health of St. Kitts and Nevis, as well as WellPoint Medical and Oncology, along with the St. Kitts Nevis Cancer Society. And the effort, or rather the goal, is geared towards mobilizing what is the necessary level of education in terms of women losing the fear in respect to knowing of the probability, the diagnostic measures, and all of the different aspects that are available to them to be able to overcome the fears in terms of ultimately succumbing to cancer.
hmm And what are the specifics of the campaign that you guys will be carrying out?
Well, this particular aspect, which the Health Promotion Unit is spearheading, and I thank them again too, on the care specifically of Dr. Merisa Grant-Tate as well as Miss Vera Edwards France, and what they have organized, in terms of what we together have been able to come up with for this part of it, is what we have coined as Meet the Girls. And Meet the Girls is simply a way of saying, let us get familiar, with our bodies. There's a whole aspect of it when it comes to femininity on a whole. For some strange reason, women are still somewhat discouraged, I suppose, in terms of, speaking of certain aspects of life. And in doing so, they neglect certain aspects of health. And what we want to do is to sensitize the general public in terms of care and health care in respect to the breast. And breast cancer, obviously, being the number one cancer for females within St. Kitts and Nevis, this is obviously one of the best places that we can make an impact.
hmm Okay, but my question for you, Dr. Grant-Tate, what is
Meet the Girls.
Meet the Girls?
Right. So Meet the Girls. What we will be doing is going to specific businesses, although the businesses, they are required to make the necessary arrangement through the St. Kitts Nevis promotion unit. And so then once that would have been done in terms of getting into contact with the health promotion unit, then we would dispatch, the necessary experts to be able to come and do the breast examinations for your staff. And the examinations, they are free. And at the same time, too, to be able to speak to the individuals in respect of, their individual risk in respect to breast cancer. And definitely to emphasize on self-examination of the breast monthly, which is a very, very important part in terms of early detection. Unfortunately, when it comes to breast cancer, there is no specific pre-factor that you can deem as, definitive in respect to a breast cancer diagnosis. So it's not one of those cancers that you can do a test for example, and, end up saying, well, if we don't do this, then we won't get breast cancer. And even though there are a number of risk factors too, having the risk factors do not necessarily mean that you will definitely get breast cancer. They are just in the sense of for guidance, as well as too, we have protective factors. So the long and short of it is to basically just to encourage individuals in terms of knowing what their risks are, and to be able to familiarize themselves with their breasts by means of the breast examinations that should be monthly, so that we can work on ensuring that if for whatever reason there should be a breast cancer diagnosis, it is early, which can then lead to better treatment and a better outcome.
Awesome. And, I believe that this is a fantastic initiative, because breast cancer is the leading cancer death in women across the Caribbean, and I dare say across the world.
Correct.
So many persons suffering from breast cancer. And so I think this initiative is quite timely and very, very important. Has something like this been done before?
Well, I know that there are a number of campaigns, and I know that over the years, I am aware that quite a few, I think physicians on a whole, have embarked on certain campaigns to be able to encourage the breast examinations. And then, of course, too, we also have, other foundations that over the years advocate towards what would be prevention. Well, prevention is a bit of an issue specifically for breast cancer, but nonetheless, in terms of the necessary advocacy, and they advocate quite a bit as well in terms of the mammograms and the screenings and so forth. So I would say that, the overall in terms of early detection is definitely nothing new, but this is the first year that we would be actually putting together the Meet the Girls campaign.
Awesome. Well, my question is, how has the response been? Because I know some women, even though, because you did mention that it's a free breast examination,
Correct,
right?
correct.
So you may have an increase in participation from women, coming to get themselves checked. But there are some women that may feel that, they don't really want to be a part of this thing where people are examining their
Right,
breasts. And
right.
that is fine, because it's natural. But how has the response been thus far to this campaign?
To be quite honest, the response has been, it's been overwhelming. We have received, quite a number of calls. Quite a few individuals have reached out as well personally, with me personally as well. And again, I've been in contact with the ministry, and I know that they have been getting quite a few calls. We also encourage too that, the businesses in Nevis, that they also participate, bearing in mind that this is a federal effort.
Yeah, I was just about
right,
to.
and so we're not ignoring Nevis. So the response on a whole, it has been amazing. To be quite honest too, I think one of the things is that at least during the month of October, women on a whole, they tend to give, and perhaps people on a whole, they tend to give a bit more attention in respect to health and cancer and so forth. So I would say that even if there is some other sort of reservation ordinarily, I think that people, for the better part of it, would make a greater effort to make use of the advantage. Even the men, in fact, have been reaching out and so forth. I've had some who have complained of the names, in terms of why is it Meet the Girls? What about Meet the Guys? But the truth of the matter is that when we look at the cancer statistics, in terms of breast cancer, and specifically in 2018, for example, which is perhaps one of the more outstanding and notably known statistics, where in 2018 alone, then there would have been over 2 million new cases worldwide of breast cancer, well over 2 million. And within that same year of 2018, then there were 6.2 million deaths, by breast cancer. So in terms of new cases, but then when we look at, the overall death toll on a whole, and And I guess what we want to try and make sure we don't want for people to continue with the fear that is associated with cancer on a whole and a cancer diagnosis, because at the end of the day, the most important information that you can have is the fact that once it is detected early and once it is that it is treated correctly, then you will have what is a much greater probability and possibility of overall survivorship and getting past the illness. So that is very important.
Awesome. So you spoke about having Nevis participating in this initiative. What are some of the other activities that the Health Promotion Unit will be carrying out to commemorate this activity?
Well, the Meet the Girls is literally just one small aspect in terms of, the numerous activities that the Health Promotion Unit have ongoing. I know currently, too, we are also, and I say we, in terms of what they have included me on, what I've been privileged to be included on, a campaign as well in respect to, capacitation of more staff in respect to pap smears and so forth for the detection of cervical cancer and so forth. Specifically, though, in respect to the Meet the Girls, there are still some ideas that are being thrown around, but to be quite fair, I think that the greatest impact that we would actually be able to make is, in fact, what we are doing in terms of actually going out, and gaining access to women who, for other reasons, would not have taken advantage of going to see a doctor to get their breast examined. So I think that, this is perhaps the most significant form of doing what we need to do.
Awesome. So, Dr. Grant-Tate, earlier you spoke of the statistics in regards to deaths from breast cancer globally. Would you be able to provide an insight as to deaths in St. Kitts and Nevis across the Caribbean region?
In terms of the actual number itself, well, not for the region, definitely. And to be quite fair, I do in fact have the statistics for St. Kitts Nevis, but I don't remember as per what year, and so I would prefer to reserve, my response on that. But what I can say is, in terms of the frequency, then it is in fact the most frequent occurring, and it is also to the most frequent associated cancer death, or death related to cancer within the Federation.
Mm-hmm. Right. And what is the age range? Do you have women between 20 and 30, 30 and 50?
Right. So breast cancer on a whole is typically an illness that you find. And yes, I know people don't like the word illness, but, it is in fact, an illness, a disease that we are prone to more so as it results to, the older age. And so then what you find is that typically the average age is between 45 and 50, although you have other patients as well, other individuals who will find themselves, with breast cancer towards the later ages, usually about postmenopausal, between 55 and as much as 65. And then too, you have younger patients, but only about 3% actually of patients with breast cancer would be diagnosed before the age of 30. So in other words, then, yes, it is possible, but breast cancer is not the most frequent occurring at that particular age. So it's usually something that you find typically from about the 40s, and the highest prevalence between 45 and 50.
Mm-hmm. And I guess it's a question that everybody wants to or would like a response to. How does one get breast cancer?
Well, to be fair, I guess maybe the day we actually are able to come to that, in terms of concluding what exactly causes breast cancer, then that would definitely be the day that we would be able to prevent breast cancer on a whole. So unfortunately, no one can actually say what ultimately causes breast cancer. What we do have, though, are the factors that put us at greatest risk, and so then those are the things that we pay attention to. For example, if a woman who would have been diagnosed with breast cancer before, then she has, in fact, a higher risk of getting breast cancer. So having had breast cancer, this automatically, and this is perhaps, one of the greatest risk factors for having breast cancer again. If it is that you have a family member, be it, and more so a first-line family member, so if it is a mother, a sister, a brother, a father even, first-line family member, then that too also increases your risk. One of the things too, and perhaps because I know lots of people, they ask, well, Doc, why is it that we're seeing so much cancer on a whole, and why is it that we have so much more breast cancer cases coming up, and so forth and so forth? And I have to point out that the age at which too we decide to have our children, that too also plays quite a role in terms of risk factor for breast cancer, and specifically women who have their first child after the age of 30, from 30 and above, then they increase the risk of breast cancer by more than 50% of that of the general population. And so then women who have no children at all, then of course too, then they also have, an increased risk. So there are quite a few, in terms of risk factors, but one of the main things that I would definitely have to point out is the age at which we are having our children. And so then what you find is that, and that might sound odd, but it really just comes down to how the hormones work. And, it's more scientific, and I wouldn't bore your audience with it. But at the end of the day, this is perhaps one of the main reasons why we are seeing more and more cases of breast cancer in particular worldwide, because of the fact that women are putting off that first, pregnancy. We are going to university, and we're organizing careers and so forth and so forth, and so then we are ultimately delaying that first pregnancy, and so then this increases the risk to breast cancer once this occurs past the age of 30 years of age. And obesity, this is another very important factor. Lifestyle, because of the fact that ultimately cholesterol is what is used as a precursor by the body to be able to make the sex hormones. And so the estrogen that ultimately drives the breast cancer, is very dependent on, what our overall dietary, what our diets are. And so then, someone who has, be it a fatty diet, or if it is that you splurge quite a bit in terms of, the red meats and, the sweets and whatnot, even though it's not directly fat, all of these are things that ultimately contribute towards obesity. And so then they increase your risk as well.
So, doctor, interestingly if you said brothers and men, can men
absolutely
get breast cancer?
Absolutely. Although, to be fair, just to point out that only 1% of men, ultimately end up with breast cancer in terms of the total breast cancer statistics. So it's not 1% of men in the world, but of the statistics, yes. Right, in terms of breast cancer, the only 1% of that accounts to men. To be very clear, one of every 8 women worldwide, would be diagnosed with breast cancer, at some point in their lives. If they have not yet been, then, they will be. So if we count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and as the lifestyle, aspects that I pointed out earlier, once those two continue, then we can perhaps expect that those statistics will go up. And contrary to that, when it comes to the men now, for every 200 women that are diagnosed with breast cancer, then there's only 1 male. And so then what that means is that overwhelmingly so, yes, breast cancer is in fact an illness of women, but yes, there are instances where men can have breast cancer as well.
Wow. That, I think you have some of the men who are listening. Like, what? Men can get breast cancer?
Absolutely.
Very good information. My other question for you, and I guess it's a question that everybody wants to know, a response. When one is diagnosed with breast cancer, what are the steps to treatment, or how does treatment go on? How would you be able to manage having breast cancer and still, living a normal life.
Well, you'd be amazed, to be quite honest. In the sense of just exactly how many individuals are able to do that, and that is in fact what we are aiming to, so that we can convert cancer from an illness of fear and illness of death, into what would be, an illness of, or rather, just as if any other chronic illness, basically, the same way you treat your blood pressure, your sugar, and so forth and so forth. Sorry, somebody
Yes,
else.
we had a call. Caller, you can call back. They're still on the line. Oh, good morning, caller. You're on Voices. Hello, good morning. Okay, we seem to have lost that call. Caller, you can call back. This is Voices on 1FM 98.9, and we're having a discussion with Dr. Merisa Grant-Tate on breast cancer. Oh, okay, caller, good morning. You're on Voices.
Hello?
Good morning, caller. You're on Voices.
Yes, good morning. Is it just breast cancer we're talking about?
Yes, yes.
Well, okay, I have a couple of questions. I'm a male, I don't have breast. But I would like to, I'm sorry, what's the person name, your guest?
Dr. Merisa Grant-Tate.
Okay, doctor. I'm a 51-year-old male, and I would like to know if someone has an infection, like a stomach infection, can it, go into like a cancer, like maybe like a colon cancer, and if so, does it affect the brain, and does it affect your sleep pattern at night? There's some other question that I will, they're not coming right now, but if you can indicate to those two that I just posed, I would listen off here for your response. And just again, mention your name for me, please, so that I can take note and probably if I can reach you and have a chat in person.
No problem at all. So it's important to point out, because what happens, and the number one error that we make, is that we hear the word cancer and we tend to bulge everything together. And in fact, and in actuality, the only thing that cancer has, rather the different types of cancer that they have in common, is in terms of the fact that they would have all started out with, a single cell that would have been transformed into a malignant cell, and then from there onwards. But the things that drive them and, favor them and so forth, they're all different. In respect to your question specifically along the lines of the, gastric cancer. Gastric cancer, there are a number of factors that are associated with gastric cancer, principally being, though, the diets that would be very low in fat. And so then this is, something that we need to point out, because very often when we have, we speak of cancer on a whole, then you hear a lot of, low fat diet and so forth. And then people tend to get a bit confused. Well, how is it that this person who would have been, very healthy, exercised a lot, and, here it is that they have a cancer. But different cancers have different factors that favor them. And so in respect to the stomach cancer, as the caller called in just now, the number one factor would be a diet that is low in fat, a diet that is low in red meat. So someone who is vegetarian, for example, someone who eats a lot of fish, for that reason too, then you find that statistic is very high in Asia, and specifically in parts like Japan and so forth, for gastric cancer. But yes, the H. pylori bacteria is also associated with cancer of the stomach. No, it cannot lead to the stomach cancer cannot lead to a cancer of the colon. Although, and to be quite fair too, the factors that favor a stomach cancer, quite the opposite for they alleviate the factors for colon cancer. So what favors one alleviates the other, and so then this is why it's important to emphasize on what is going to be a balanced meal, balanced nutrition, good exercise, and just taking overall good care of yourself.
Thank you so much, doctor, for that insight. I realized when the caller called in, his opening remarks were, "I'm a man and I don't have breasts." Well, we would have said, the doctor would have said before, that men can get breast
Absolutely.
cancer, even though the cases are really low,
Right.
extremely low. Men can get breast cancer. But at this time, we're going to take a short break,
Okay.
and we will be right back to continue this discussion.
WINN is 98.9. 98.9 is Win FM.
Hey kids, drink healthy!
Reduced sugar chubby with the same great taste. Lots of magic fruity flavors, drink the more healthy way.
It tastes so yummy, chubby, chubby.
25% less sugar chubby. Be active, be healthy, drink lots of chubby. Kicking football, playing cricket, having fun in the sun.
It's chubby.
Reduced sugar chubby keeps you cool and refreshed.
It tastes so yummy, chubby, chubby.
25% less sugar chubby. Jumping rope, running races, have fun.
It tastes so yummy, chubby.
Drink the more healthy way!
Good morning, and welcome back to Voices. We have a caller in the air. Good morning, caller. You're on Voices.
Yes, it's me again. I did ask if the doctor can give me her name and probably a phone number so I can try and reach her. Also, I also did ask if the upset stomach, does it affect the sleep pattern at night, and also if she can explain. I was doing some research, so I came across this word, candida and dyspepsia. If she can elaborate, if she's familiar with those two terms when it comes to cancer, I'll be grateful. But also, let her answer the sleep pattern, and if she can give her name, and so I can try and see if I can have a chat with her in person. Thank you.
Doctor?
All right. So basically, in terms of the dyspepsia, which is what I think that the caller would have made mention of, dyspepsia is really just to say, gastric disturbances. It can manifest itself in the way of stomach upset. You can feel a bit gassy. You can feel a bit not quite nauseated, but just basically what would be gastric disturbances. In terms of when he made reference to candidiasis, that's really just what we'd refer to as thrush, in terms of local and common terms as we refer to it. In terms of sleep pattern, a whole lot of different things can actually affect sleep pattern. So a change in sleep pattern is not necessarily, anything indicative of a cancer, diagnosis. But what I would advise is that, yes, you definitely, get checked. And so then be able to, clarify whatever might be. In terms of my name is Dr. Merisa Grant-Tate, and you can call 767-1800 to schedule your appointments.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Doc, for that insight. So, yes, we're having this discussion with Dr. Merisa Grant-Tate on breast cancer. However, you can feel free to call in and ask questions related to the topic. Something about breast cancer and something related to cancer on a whole. So your questions are appreciated and your questions are welcomed. But Doctor, it is a privilege to have you here, I must say.
Thank you.
Because I think this is a discussion that we must have and persons that must be educated on this topic, because you indicated some alarming numbers earlier about some of the deaths and cases, whether it's here in the region or worldwide. And so I think women and men, because you did indicate that men too could get breast cancer. So men, you're not out of the whole thing. Men too can get breast cancer, even though the numbers are really low. But I think men and women should really take advantage of this campaign that will be taking place. When is the start of this campaign? Has it already started?
So we've already started.
Okay, good. And it will be
so it's ongoing throughout the month of October.
Okay, so you started when the month started.
Correct.
Okay. We have a caller. Good morning, caller. You're on Voices.
Good morning, Mr. Cornelius. How are you doing?
Good morning. I'm doing fine. And you?
Oh, here giving God thanks for another day, man.
Awesome.
Yeah, about that, when you hear about breast cancer and cancer, I say, well, I'll take blindness. Lord deliver. Now, for the doctor, it is usually recommended that you have chemo, depending on the stage, like chemo, radiation, mastectomy, where you cut off the breast. Well, how do you go about treating the male? Because they have less mass tissue. So is the treatment for breast cancer in males different from that from females? That is the question. All right, then.
Thank you. Thank you, caller.
Beautiful question. So specifically, and as you pointed out, yes, there's less tissue in terms of, breasts for the man than what there is for the female. And what happens, in fact, is that what that means is that there is less space for the cancer to actually be able to pass through before it becomes, able to spread to other parts of the body and so forth. And so then for this reason too, it generally gives what is a poorer prognosis or outcome in terms of men, but not because of the fact that it is biologically different, so just because of the fact that there is less breast tissue and so there's less area for it to pass through. In respect to the treatment specifically, as you said, and correctly so, the treatment for breast cancer is based around the stage of the illness. However, it should always undergo surgery in the sense of for curative purposes. There will be cases where a patient will not be eligible for surgery because of the fact that the tumor would have been, it would have grown too large, it would have spread too far, that sort of thing. And sometimes it might be necessary to begin with what would be between a combination of chemotherapy with radiotherapy and even immunotherapy, hormonal therapy, and so forth, and then perhaps reevaluate the possibility of surgery. So on a whole, though, in terms of male and female, there's no specific difference in terms of the management. It literally just comes back down to the stage of the illness to be able to decide what is applicable.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your response, Doctor. There's a comment here on the Facebook Live. Someone from Facebook said, in America, they have cancer in the breast under the arm. In the breast under the arm. Could you speak to that?
I'm not too sure what they're referring to. In the breast under the arm?
That's what the comment is saying. In the breast under the arm, or maybe under the arm, like right under the section there.
I'm not too sure in terms of the context, but what I can say is that, breast cancer, it starts out as a localized, illness, which is to say specifically within the breast. And then what happens is that it spreads to the regional nodes, which are principally those within the arm. And so then, it becomes what we would refer to as a regional illness. And then from there, then it becomes systemic once it is left untreated. Then it spreads to other parts of the body, be it the bones, be it the lungs, the liver, the brain even. But in terms of the underarm aspect, the only thing that comes to mind in that regard would be in respect to the lymph nodes and having it spread from the breast to the lymph nodes, which is a common practice.
Mm-hmm. We have a caller. Good morning, caller. You're on Voices. Good morning, caller. You're on Voices.
Hello, good morning. Hi, Dr. Merisa Grant-Tate. How are you?
I'm well. Good morning. How are you?
Not too bad. I'm just actually.
Hello, caller.
Hello, are you hearing me?
Yes, I'm hearing you now.
Okay, I said I just clicked into the station and hearing this wonderful, interesting topic. But I am wondering if the doctor had touched on some of the predisposing factors like high estrogen levels, the use of the contraceptive pill, etc. Because I know scientifically it's been proven that the pill itself and prolonged use of the pill, especially the high estrogen ones, do predispose to breast cancer, among other things. One of my concerns is, that when I go into pharmacies, I see people just going in and buying the pill and being dished it out. Don't know if those people were family planning trained or medics. But I'm just wondering who then follows up on the effect that the contraceptive pill could have on women's lives, among other things. I know there are other predisposing factors, but I want your take on that.
Okay.
The use of the contraceptive pill, who monitors it, who educates them about the mode of action and side effects, among other things like deep brain thrombosis and so forth. But seeing that your topic is specifically on breast cancer, please give me your take on the pill and that one. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. So, in respect to the pill specifically, and you're correct in respect to estrogen being a problem and estrogen therapy being a problem, so if, for example, and not only in respect to and I'll come specifically to the pill because with the pill it's different, but women, for example, who are menopausal or perimenopausal rather, and they're going through the initial symptoms of menopause, very often it would have been a habit to prescribe supplementary estrogens to be able to alleviate much of those symptoms. And that is definitely a risk factor for breast cancer. And as such, that practice itself, it has been significantly reduced and it's probably almost extinct by now. In respect to the birth control pill, though, what happens is that the birth control pill, it is not, at least what is being sold, it is not typically just the estrogen. What it is the combined pill. And so then once it is that it is the combined pill, in other words, then it has, both components, then what you will find is that it absolutely does not have any impact in terms of, increasing the risk to breast cancer. If it were just an estrogen pill alone being used for birth control, then yes, it would. But because of the fact that it's a combined pill, then, and again, that is what is being sold now, that is what is being marketed, it does not increase the risk for breast cancer. What we can say in respect to the birth control pill along with breast cancer is that the only thing that it in fact does is by helping to put off that first pregnancy. Because remember, we spoke a bit earlier in terms of the age of the first pregnancy, and what happens is that once it is that the first pregnancy is past the age of 30 or over, then that increases the risk by 50% when compared to the general population. And oddly enough, if you have that first pregnancy by 20, then what happens is that it decreases the risk of breast cancer by 50% when compared to the general population. And for individuals who would have had the first pregnancy before the age of 20, then that in fact too further decreases the risk by an additional third. So what that means is that, again, when it comes to the birth control pill specifically, if it is that you are a woman who would have already have had your first child, etc., there's really absolutely no concern in respect to breast cancer as a result of just taking the pill.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. So just to have a better understanding, so I don't want to say are you saying, but from what you've said, the younger you are when you get
your first child, right.
decreases the risk.
Absolutely. And this is by
Wow.
no means, and I myself too, I am a past teenage mother, by the way. My son is 24 years of age. And, as such, again, too, when I am looking at the possibilities in terms of risk and what it is that we have to look at, because we have to bear in mind we are all at risk for cancers, one cancer or another. And in fact, cancer is the second highest cause of death worldwide, and it is expected to be number one by 2030, in terms of incidence overall. And so then what that means is that we have to all be able to pay attention to what our individual risk factors are. And so then when it comes to the cancers that I myself, concern myself about, then breast cancer is not on the top of my list. I still do my month-to-month examinations that I should. I will still be doing my mammograms annually as I should, and so forth and so forth. But then there is an added layer of protection, dare I say, because it is in fact a protective factor. Not that we are advocating at all by any means in terms of teenage pregnancy or anything of that sort, but it is important so that when we are looking in terms of why is it that we have, greater incidence in breast cancer compared to other years, then this is why. Our grandmothers, they used to have their first sets of kids, at very early ages and so forth. And so then you find, in terms of the incidence, it was significantly lower compared to what it is that we are seeing now.
Wow. That is some really good, meaningful information. And I think some women are out there scratching their head. I mean, what's going on here, But very good information. And I think, as I said, the women are really intrigued.
Thanks.
Really, really intrigued to the discussion we're having here. So, yes, we're having the discussion with Dr. Merisa Grant-Tate, a representative from the Ministry of Health here in St. Kitts and Nevis. We have a caller. Good morning, caller. You're on Voices.
Nice me, I'm back again.
Hi, Mrs. Henry.
Like you, I always find this analysis very interesting because then it flies against our culture of what the health people promote. No, serious, and then you have our young people going off to study. Sometime by the time they settle down, they're in their 30s. So what would you advocate?
The other factors.
But the young professionals, is there something since they're younger they can do? Maybe the contraceptives might help. I'm just wondering.
Right.
Most of them would tend to get their first child after they finish their first and second degree, their master's.
Correct.
So what can they do to protect themselves since they are not available to get their kids in their teenage? Because
and we're not advocating that they do either.
Well, but if you have to weigh,
right.
I don't either, but when you listen to this, and then those who have no children, I mean, it sounds like get up and get a child if you want to live.
No, because bearing in mind too, there are other factors, that we still have to take into account. We still have to look at obesity, and so then what I would do, to any young woman who is pursuing studies and so forth, I definitely would encourage her to do that, but also to try and maintain what is a healthier lifestyle. Excluding what would be the excess sugars, excluding, the fats from the diet as much as possible in terms of the fatty diet and so forth.
Yeah, because in the old time days, they get in 12, they get in 13, no cancer, no nothing. I mean, serious, when I look at life and I see, it makes you wonder, what happened to life? It seems as though the easier and more comfortable life becomes, the more vulnerable you are to these deadly diseases.
With breast cancer, that is in fact correct, because with breast cancer, right, once the
women out there, take warning, go get the child. And all of you young men who want to marry, please go and marry. You keep back the women. They are the one, like Mr. Cornelius, you married yet?
No, I'm not.
And you want somebody to get breast cancer? All right, then.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Henry, for your call. Do you have any comments?
No. just to emphasize that again, that there's no specific one factor that amounts to a breast cancer, a definitive breast cancer diagnosis. So it's a matter of knowing your factors, your risk factors, so that you would be able to pay attention, and then you would be able to calculate your risk and be able to emphasize on the screening methods as how should be.
Very good. I believe it is an individual thing, because Miss Henry said something. It's not that you just get pregnant at a young age to safeguard yourself from catching from contracting breast cancer.
Mm-hmm.
You have to look at the other risk factors,
Absolutely.
whether it's obesity, and unhealthy diet, or
alcohol.
alcohol.
And we have a lot of young women who party a lot, and
Drink a lot of rum.
right. And that in itself too is a risk factor for breast cancer and many other cancers as well. So the areas that we can put the work in, then those are the areas that we need to pay attention to. Lifestyle.
So it's a personal responsibility, because what if you decide to get a child at a young age, but then you find out that the breast cancer, it's something that is it happens frequently within your family, so it's in your genes.
Right.
Your mother had it, your grandmother had it, your uncle had it, your brother had it, and so you may think that doing all of these other things takes you out of that fraction of getting breast cancer.
Right. When it comes to the genetic aspect of it, when specifically with breast cancer, and generally too when it comes to cancers on a whole, the genetic frequency really only accounts for about 20% of the cases. So in other words, then, and when we speak to family history, it's still not the same as referring to, the genetics that would have been associated. What you find, even with families sometimes, and beyond genes, is that you have what is, a customary in terms, or something that is usual, and a usual practice rather, in terms of, lifestyle and habits and so forth and so forth. So, and to, of course, obviously, along the lines of, family history that can have some impact on it. But when it comes to specifically in terms of genetics, breast cancer and cancers on a whole, only about 20% of the cases are actually linked as such. Right?
Awesome. So, Doctor, I think I lost my question, but I had a question for those persons who were patients of breast cancer. Let's say you had breast cancer, and 5 years down the road you want to get a child, and because of that breast cancer you probably had to lose a breast. Does it affect you getting a child going forward?
No, it doesn't. And to be quite honest, everything comes back down to, the individual. And what you find too, because even that too, in terms of losing a breast, not all women have to lose the entire breast for breast cancer. And this is again to why we drive the emphasis on early detection, so that this can increase the likelihood of an early diagnosis, allow for what would be a more conservative treatment, a patient who might then instead be able to do a partial surgery, a partial mastectomy, instead of having the entire thing removed, which then would then have to be followed by other forms of treatment to help to reduce the likelihood of the cancer returning. But in terms of the overall aspect, in respect to fertility on a whole, no, it does not. And to be fair too, there's even breast cancer in pregnancy, and this is one of the other aspects that we look at and that we have to pay attention to. And yes, there is treatment. A patient who is pregnant, and if it is that she's diagnosed with breast cancer, then yes, she is treated as well throughout the pregnancy. For the cancer, the type of treatment and at what phase of the pregnancy she receives what is very specific. But the point of the matter is that there's treatment for everything and at every time.
But does that affect the pregnancy? Because
no, it does not.
Being pregnant and having to do, is it chemotherapy?
But there is chemotherapy that we use for pregnant patients, and it's a first line of chemotherapy as well. But then chemotherapy would only be applied from the second trimester onwards.
Wow.
Right.
A lot of good information here. I hope the men and women are listening and taking notes, so you could, have that personal responsibility and know how to, I don't want to say safeguard, but protect yourself from breast cancer and know your risk factors, whether it's within your genes or your diet or your bad habits. But we're going to take a short break, and we will be right back to welcome some calls and have some closing remarks by Dr. Merisa.
We're different. We're 98.9. 98.9 Win FM.
Every day, your immune system is compromised. You use up vitamin C quickly and even faster with stress and cold. Burst back into life with Halib Orange. Burst back into health with 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C, as much as in 12 oranges. Each effervescent tablet is bursting with fresh fruit flavor, sparkling orange, lemon and sugar-free blackcurrant, also suitable for diabetics. Health never tasted so good. Halib Orange, bursting with flavor, bursting with health.
Good day and welcome back to Voices. Today is Thursday, October 8th, and we're here having a discussion with Dr. Merisa Grant-Tate. However, we are wrapping up this discussion. We had a very good discussion here this morning on breast cancer and related topics. The Ministry of Health and the Health Promotion Unit in St. Kitts and Nevis embarking upon an initiative for Breast Cancer Awareness Month. I will now allow Dr. Grant-Tate to give her closing remarks. Doctor?
Okay, so again, just to point out that there is absolutely no need for us to be fearful in respect to when we hear the word cancer. Cancer is something that we are all, and I say all because I myself too, and many others, we are all prone to. And so it is necessary that we become aware of what our individual risk factors are. And in respect to breast cancer, then I want to emphasize on the need for monthly breast examinations importance that women examine their own breasts monthly. And again, just to emphasize that the purpose of the monthly breast examination is so that you as a woman, you can be familiar with what is there and with what is not ordinarily there. And so then ultimately this helps to be able to find if something should appear, to find it very quickly and be able to be rid of the problem in a much easier and much more effective way. So just to point out that it's important that we do the necessary screens, we do the necessary checks, and you can help yourself quite a bit in terms of the overall outcome by doing that monthly breast examination. Lifestyle and diet, very important as well. If it is that you're a bit overweight, try and become a bit more active, try and make healthier food choices, and pull along your friends, pull along your sisters, pull along your co-workers. Try and be rid of the things that we can avoid, the alcohol and so forth, and let's just basically march towards what would be a healthier lifestyle.
Thank you so much, Dr. Merisa Grant-Tate. It was indeed a privilege and an honor to have you here in the studios of 98.9 Win FM to provide some insight and some knowledge. Share your knowledge on this very, very interesting and important topic. This is the end of the first segment of Voices. We are now going to take a break for some ads to say thank you to our sponsors and for the news at 12. We will be right back after this break.
I am a king and I will never give up. Step on the battlefield now, royal soldier. All my loyal soldiers, yeah. I'm right here, I'll forever stay young. Soar like an eagle, rise up, royal soldier. All my loyal soldiers, yeah. They try to take my spirit, but they can't take my life, yeah. They try to test my strength, but it's all in their mind. They try to kill my day, but I can't kill my night. No, I know they wouldn't succeed even if they try, yeah.